For the last couple of weeks, we have witnessed Brazil try to sue X, also known as Twitter, simply because of the fact that Elon Musk interviewed Trump on the platform. Not only are they trying to sue X, but they have also locked Starlink bank accounts and are now trying to bankrupt Starlink, simply because of the fact that Elon Musk interviewed a former president who is also running for re-election. This is what happens when you give the power to the government and allow them to dictate what is true and what is false. This is why governments must try as much as they possibly can to stay out of the public square and allow people to make their own decisions on things, especially when you try to block things that would have zero effect on your own country's political system. That's the case because of the fact that this is American politics, not Brazilian politics, which they have their own issues going on now. This is utterly disgusting. This is exactly what you would expect from a guy who is a communist and a judge who looks like Darth Vader. With that being said, let's dig in.
Facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast, I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past.
So digging right in, we actually have a Daily Wire article. We have Brazil's crackdown on X should be a warning sign for all Americans, legal group warns, which I completely agree with because this is only the beginning. All of these things that are happening abroad, so the things that are happening in Canada, the things that are happening in Brazil are the exact same things that are going to be happening in America, but in a few years or in a few months. That's the most telling thing about all of this, is just like how we look at Canada. Canada is simply America's evil top hat because of the fact that they implement policies before America does. We can see the long-term or kind of long-term effects of these policies before they actually get their way over to America. They have induced killings, induced ending. And you can actually choose when you want to do it in Canada. And you can see that some counties in some communities have higher rates of this than actual natural deaths, which is just utterly disgusting. And they're trying to make capsules like Futurama that you can go in and you can just say, I give up, which is not a good thing whatsoever because it started as, it starts always at the most extreme cases. Like, oh no, this is only going to be for the grandma or the grandfather that's suffering and stuff like that. But it never ends there. You give the state and the country a inch and they take a whole entire mile and they keep going on that 1 mile. So it doesn't just stop at the mile, then it goes to 5 miles, 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles, and then they control your whole entire life and you can choose when to do it. You can be 18 years old and boom, you chose to do that just because of the fact that your girlfriend broke up with you. No, that should not be the case. Alliance Defending Freedom on Saturday filed a petition to support X, formerly known as Twitter, after a Brazilian judge ruled that social media platforms should be banned in the country. Which if I was Elon, I would just say, no, listen, we're just not going to operate until they start enforcing their own rules and regulations, because they have rules and regulations against this. But of course, they just want to ignore their own rules and regulations simply because of the fact that they do not agree with what Elon Musk is doing. They'll allow Facebook, they'll allow YouTube, they'll allow all the other platforms, but X is a different story because X does not ban many things, which is a good thing because it's a public square. In response, the Alliance Defending Freedom filed the petition asking the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights to intervene on behalf of X, as it is blocked. The commission has jurisdiction over Brazil under the American Conversion. People in Brazil who try to express X through other means like the VPN could face daily fines of $9,000, which is just disgusting. It's concerning that governments across the Western legal tradition have been starting to look at these companies as avenues to censor rather than benefits to mankind. ADF SVP of Corporate Engagement, Jeremy Tebesco, told the Daily Wire on Tuesday, quote, you really can't truly be free. You can't live in a democracy and you can't enjoy freedom unless you have free speech as an underlying foundation of your society. And I completely agree with that, because if you do not have the freedom of speech to actually just talk about your opinions and talk about what you think, then how are you going to come to the right answer? What, by government forcing you to? No, that's not how this works here. Tedesco said that the situation in Brazil should consider all of Americans because the exact same impulse to censor exists in our own government. I completely agree with that. He pointed to the FBI recommending censorship of stories on the Hunter Biden laptop, as well as the Biden administration's efforts to censor information on COVID last week. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg released a letter saying that the Biden-Harris administration repeatedly asked him to censor posts about COVID on its platforms. And I completely agree with that because of the fact that, yeah, it is happening. And it happened during COVID too. You could not say a lot of things on X/Twitter. And this is exactly why Elon Musk came in and bought it, because they were not governing Twitter the right way. Now it's governed the right way because now there's more freedom of speech, and he just does not comply to a lot of governments which tell him to delete certain things. Now he's like, no, we're going to keep that on the platform, and we're going to allow the people to make their own informed decisions on this topic, and that's exactly what should happen here. Moving on to the next article, we actually have Kamala swipes yet another Trump policy. This time it's about steel. So she's set to lose Pennsylvania because of this. Pennsylvania is such a huge steel manufacturing state that when you go against steel and you go against the steel manufacturing companies or the steel manufacturing jobs, people tend not to like you because of the fact that that so heavily is reliant in that state. So you need to choose where you're talking about. Harris announced that she would keep United States Steel under domestic ownership during a campaign stop in Pittsburgh on Monday. The United States Steel is a historic American company and it is vital for our nation to maintain strong American steel companies, Harris said. But she would not know the first thing about business to actually keep them in America. Back in January, former President Donald Trump said that he would block the sale of United States Steel to Nippon Steel, Japan's largest steelmaker, if he were elected president again. Nippon has put forward a $15 billion proposal to acquire the American company, which is not good. They should not allow that to take place because that's a Japan company, and all of your jobs are going to go straight to Japan. I would block it instantaneously. Absolutely, Trump said. We would save the steel industry. Now United States is being bought by Japan, so terrible. Then, in March, President Joe Biden has voiced an opposition to the sale. Yeah, but Joe Biden won't do anything besides go to the beach in Delaware, so it doesn't really matter what he has to say. This is at least the third time Harris has copied a policy that was put forward by his opponent this election cycle. Now, yeah, so I know that the first one is the tax credit for children, and then she goes and copies something else, and now this is the third time that she's copied the Trump administration. She looks over and she's like, oh, what answer do you have at number 5? Okay, I'll put that. And she just copies Trump's answers that he put on the test, thinking that it's gonna get her extra credit, but the teacher heard that and he marks it wrong. Which, yeah, that's what we're doing as American people, because you're actually just copying Trump's policies and just stamping your name on it. The Democratic nominee blindsided Democrats last month when she adopted Trump's viral no tax on tips. Okay, that's the first one. The first one, the no tax on tips, and then the child tax credit, and then now this. So she does not have any opinions on her own because of the fact that she keeps on doing the same exact stuff. She, like I said, keeps looking at the Trump policies and saying, well, that's popular, let me do it myself. It doesn't make any sense. It's my promise to everyone here, when I am president, we will continue fighting for working families in America, including to raise the minimum wage, which does not make any sense. If anything, we need to get rid of the minimum wage, and this is what a lot of people don't understand about the minimum wage. When we implement a minimum wage, that means that companies now have to look at these beginner people to fulfill roles that they previously had people that know what they're doing to do that job. So now minimum wage being what, $15 an hour at some places, $13.50 at other places. Let's just say if it is at $13.50 and you could have hired a teenager to do the same exact job at $7 an hour, why would you not hire an adult to fulfill that role with experience over the child, over the teenager that just became 18 years old or 16 and a half, where you can get your worker's permit? Why? Why is that a thing now? And that's exactly why we have a generational problem in my generation, a Gen Z, that people cannot find jobs because now they're looking at minimum wage as companies and they're saying, why would we go and hire this person with no experience for $13.50 when we can go and hire this person that's been working in the field for like 5 years at $13.50? Companies are not looking at this as a good thing. They're looking at this as a bad thing. So if anything, we need to get rid of a minimum wage. We need to implement a strategy to actually get our young people back at work. We need to implement a policy to get the unemployment at record lows. We need to make sure that people get back on their feet. Companies are incentivized to hire younger people with little to no experience so that they can get experience, because you're stuck within a rock and a hard place. And I have a friend that submitted thousands and thousands of applications and he still has no biters because of the fact that he doesn't have a lot of experience, and that's not his fault. That's the fault of our society, because he's not set up for success in our society because of the fact that everybody wants experience to get a job, but you need a job to get the experience. You're stuck within this complex rock and a hard place scenario in which you are placed there from the very government that you support for some reason. This is exactly why I don't like our government in the way that they function, because of the fact that they do things like this. They set people up for failure, and then they are acting surprised when the failure actually happens. Like, oh, why is there a failure in our unemployment rates for Gen Z people? Yeah, that's exactly the reason, because you set up these people for failure. It's utterly disgusting. It really, really is. And now what people are saying is, well, you need a college degree for a minimum wage job, which does not make any sense whatsoever. That is completely backwards. What the reason why you would get a college degree in let's just say a bachelor's degree or some minimal some other minimum college degree, entry level degree, you just get your associate's degree or something like that in writing or PowerPoint or something like that, so you can get a job in that field. So let's just say that you try to do that. The company still wants actual experience, and schooling does not count as actual experience. So now you need to go and sign up as a intern, but an intern is paid. So now why wouldn't they hire an intern that actually knows what they're doing? But you can't have an intern that knows what they're doing unless you had an intern that worked in the field before. So again, you're stuck within a rock and a hard place. That's exactly why internships, as our parents went through when they were looking at work, they had internships that they can apply to. They worked for the company for a couple of months non-paid, and then the company decided if they wanted to keep them or not. And that is an actual good thing. As much as people were saying, oh, it's unfair and stuff like that, okay, yeah, it was unfair until you got paid and then you had a good job. So again, yeah, I fully understand where people are coming from in that aspect. Like, why would I work and not get paid? What am I supposed to do? Well, you need to show the company that you can actually do a good job. You need to show the company that you are volunteering at this rate, free for now, so you can show them that you are actually a good employee and actually mean business. And then they can see that you have the experience and see how you have the know-how to do the job, and then they can potentially hire you in the future. That's the most important part about all this. And of course, we just completely got rid of that, saying that companies now have to pay for interns, which is just crazy. Yeah, it's completely ruining. Our government is completely ruining our economy and the way that younger people can actually get jobs. Under the Trump administration, everybody can find a job. If you wanted a job, you got a job. But now, no, nobody's hiring. Good luck. You get a job at McDonald's. I think that's about it. McDonald's, Wendy's, stuff like that. If you want to be a server, you need experience. So you can't get experience unless you become a server, and you can't become a server. It's just too much. It really, really is. Moving on to the next article, we actually have a Federalist article. We have CDC, FBI working to hide data showing shootings stopped by good guys with guns, which I completely, this is a complete slap in the face to the American people, because we know as Americans that guns stop crime. We can look at so many different stories of people that are in New York. It's a mother, single mother, and she doesn't know what she could do if somebody breaks in. So she gets a firearm, she gets the safety training, all that. She knows how to use it. She feels comfortable with it. And somebody broke inside of her house, and then she ended up protecting herself. Who knows what would have happened? And this happens so many times. And of course, nobody wants to pay attention to this because of the fact that they're just saying a gun, and then they start crying. Look, there's guns in the studio and nothing's even happening. Do you hear guns going off? No, you don't, because guns are safe if you put it in the safe. You don't have it loaded unless you actually are going to intend to use it. You don't put your finger on the trigger unless you intend to shoot it, and you do not aim it at anybody that you do not intend to shoot at, or anybody or anything that you do not intend to shoot at. So yeah, these are the basic gun safety laws that we have in America, or basic gun safety standards that everybody with a brain would actually realize. You don't point the gun at anything that you don't intend to shoot at, then no accident will happen. If you don't put your finger on the trigger, then nothing will happen because the bullet wouldn't come out. And if you don't have any bullets inside of the gun, then nothing will happen, because even if you do push the trigger or aim it at something, nothing is in the gun. So yeah, these are the 3 safety standards that everybody already knows if they already have a firearm. So moving with this article here, for years, gun control activists have sought to debunk the so-called quote, good guy with a gun myth, in an effort to pass more stringent gun controls on one of our nation's most cherished liberties. In support of this agenda, the federal government, in conjunction with the legacy media, has sought to suppress the abundant evidence in support of the truth in the armed, law-abiding citizens are one of the most effective deterrents against public mass casualty attacks. For instance, in 2022, the 22-year-old Alicia Dickens stopped a mass public shooting using his legally carried manufactured concealed handgun. This story has become an unusual instance in which the national media covered his historic action, but an Associated Press headline claimed, quote, "Rear in the United States for an active shooter to be stopped by a bystander." Meanwhile, a Washington Post headline, "Rampage in Indiana, a rare instance of armed civilian ending a mass shooting." The same year, Time magazine published an article politicizing the tragic school shooting in Uvalde, arguing that law enforcement's conventional response that proves that good guys with guns keep failing to stop mass shootings. Meanwhile, the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, under the Biden administration, has sought to suppress data proving that armed civilians help prevent crime by removing its estimates for defensive gun uses from its website, which is completely a slap in the face of the American people, and the CDC should be defunded immediately. The CDC has non-stop lied to the American people. What are they actually doing for us at this point? They're lying to us. They're covering information that could be a life or death. If you look at the statistics and you're like, well, this is going to protect me, is it not going to protect me? And they're lying about statistics. Everyone responsible for this should be completely fired. The CDC needs to be overhauled from the ground up and then just dismantled altogether. The NINID, or whatever it's called, the National Center for Infectious Diseases, the NIAID, something like that. That's what the Fauci used to be the head of. That needs to be defunded. The FDC needs to be defunded because they keep allowing these companies to go under the radar with mold in their factories, and then they tell us afterwards, like, oh yeah, by the way, there is actually a recall on all of these brands that you already ate for the last couple months, by the way, but there's a recall on the brand, so just throw them out. You won't get a refund in this economy. No, we don't have the money for that, but it's okay, just throw it out. Like, what are you even talking about? Why are you coming to me now and saying this after I already ate the food? Like, what am I supposed to do now? Throw it out? No, that's stupid. This decision was taken after gun control activist Mark Bryan, founder of the Gun Violence Archive, lobbied the CDC to remove misinformation regarding defensive gun use estimates because they were cited by gun rights folks, which does not make any sense, because why are we going to accept money from this guy that's actually trying to remove statistics that are true? There's true statistics on CDC website, and he said, no, you're going to take it right down. That's stupid. The FBI also shown itself to be susceptible to political pressure. The FBI defines an active shooter attack as an ongoing when an individual actively kills or attempts to kill people within a public populated area. This measure includes everything from just one person shot at, even a target isn't hit, to a mass public shooting. It doesn't include, however, shootings involving other crimes such as robbery or fighting over drug turf. To compile its list, the FBI hired researchers at the Texas State University. Police departments don't record these cases, so the researchers relied on Google searches to find news stories about these incidents. As such, the FBI's evidence relies on a data set that is actively hostile to the truth, which does not make any sense, because if you're an investigator hired by the state, why are you relying on Google, known suppressing information? During the 2020 and the beginning of 2021, I worked as a senior advisor for the research and statistics at the United States Department of Justice. My job including evaluating the FBI's active shooting reports. During my time with the DOJ, I discovered the FBI either missed or misidentified many cases of civilians using guns to stop attacks. For instance, the FBI continues to report that armed civilians only stop about 14 of the 350 active shooter cases that is identified in the 10 years from 2014 to 2023. Yes, but one is better than none, but I don't believe those statistics. The Crime Prevention Center, the CPRC, which this person run, has found many more cases and is keeping an updated list. As such, the CPRC numbers tell a much different story. Out of 515 active shooting situations from 2014 to 2023, active civilians stopped 180, which obviously is a lot. And this is even better because of the fact that the cops didn't have to go and come minutes later. They could have stopped this problem, and they did stop this problem right when it started to happen. Our numbers even excluded 27 cases where a law-abiding citizen with a gun stopped an attacker before he could even fire one shot. Yeah, good. Overall, the CPRC estimates that the law-abiding citizens with guns have stopped about 35% of active shooting situations over the last decade and 39.6% in the last 5 years, which is completely good. That is really good. How many active shooter situations did the FBI stop? How many active shooter situations did the police stop? Maybe one. And I can go back and I can see, I mean, I didn't even stop because people still died. But how many active shooter situations did the police stop? Not involving last year's attempt or 2 years ago attempt in Nashville. None? what are we talking about here? We're talking about civilians, which are not even paid, which are just law-abiding citizens stopping a bad guy with a gun from shooting a lot of people. This is exactly what we should have in place because of the fact that this is the first responder at this situation. This figure increases even more when controlling over only the areas where civilians are legally allowed to carry a firearm. After all, you can't accept the law-abiding citizens to stop attacks in gun-free zones. In places where law-abiding citizens are allowed to carry a firearm, we estimate that around armed civilians stopped 51% of mass shootings over the past decade. Over the last 5 years, that figure was 53%. That's good. That's really good, and they're trying to suppress this information because it's true. One such case ignored by the FBI occurred on the Corners, Georgia in 1999, when an active shooter at the Heritage High School was disarmed by an assistant principal. When this writer presented this case, among others, to the FBI, a bureau official acknowledged that the FBI did not come across this incident during its research in 2015 because it did not meet the FBI's active shooter definition. Yes, because it was stopped. Disgusting. When questioned about their admission to this in other instances, the reason the Bureau gave for this mistake was that their reports are limited to scope. It's not surprising that researchers miss cases or occasionally misidentify them, but the FBI refuses to fix its errors in even blatant omissions that the writer has pointed out and has been corrected. The FBI dataset is still missing so many defensive gun uses that it is hard to believe that it's not intentional. And the fact that they've never corrected mistakes and are brought their attention is an even more damning fact. All the while, the news media unquestionably reports that the FBI numbers actively distorting the truth regarding the pivotal role responsible gun owners have played in preventing crime and limiting casualties during mass shootings. I completely agree with this. And they do not want you with a gun. That's exactly what it boils down to. So with that being said, we're going to sum up this episode here. If you did like this episode and you do want to see more, I do try to upload every single Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for listening. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye.